very happy to be here today. As Mark mentioned, I was a business writer for 12 years covering everything that you guys do. And I kind of switched to the other side of the mirror, so it's really fun to be here today. Actually, this panel is not here to diss MBA programs. We figured this conversation actually is maybe behind us, or more importantly, we have more interesting things here to talk about, which are all the programs that these guys are developing and the approach they take on reaching out to different and new constituencies where the entrepreneurship spirit lives. So without further ado, I will have us meet every single panelist here. So first here is Gokul Kodama, who many of you may actually know. He has been an entrepreneur for nearly 40 years. He has launched 10 for-profit businesses and 6 non-profit organizations. He is the founder and instructor for the Urban Fire Entrepreneurship Program based in Oakland. So, Gokul, if you could, in one sentence, give us your academic credentials and introduce and tell us about Urban West.
Well, I think that my academic credentials are terrible. So I grew up in San Francisco and went to San Francisco State, got a BA in journalism. Other than that, I really didn't study much at all. In fact, I was reading a number of pages I had read up until I was a junior. It was 56 pages altogether. So I wasn't much of a student, but where I really did learn a lot was actually just out in the streets. And I grew up in a very poor community, so the type of education I was really, which I really understood, was around just doing things, screwing up, and then trying to fix your mistakes.
Tell us about the organization.
Okay, so I run a entrepreneurship training program, and I look upon entrepreneurship as a means of civil rights. My students are very different from what you probably would think about when you think about entrepreneurship. The name of the program is called Urban FIRE, and FIRE is an acronym which stands for Financial Intelligence Responsible Entrepreneurship. And what I do is I take folks from the inner cities, pretty much like how I grew up. And so these are folks that are coming out of unemployment, coming out of welfare programs. I have some of my best students are ones that came out of San Quentin.
We'll talk more about that.
Yeah, and so it's a very different type of thing, but I think that there's some tremendous opportunities in inner cities that we all seem to not see.
Next to Gokul, we have Mike Del Potro, who is the founder of Sparkseed, a non-profit accelerator that invests in young social entrepreneurs. So, your academic credentials, please, in one sentence, and tell us about Sparkseed.
Sure. So my background is I went to Boston College and Yale, and I started an organization called Sparkseed while a graduate student at Yale. And what we do is we identify the most promising social entrepreneurs at a very young age, and we help them launch their businesses. And so we've been working, the last 2 years we focused on 15 businesses, and it's social entrepreneurship, meaning either environmental or social issues, ranging from a composting company to educational platforms to programs that support entrepreneurs in Mali and China. And interesting that this panel is on education because it was really started out of a need on college campuses for entrepreneurial support.
Next to Mike is Shay Colson. He is the local ambassador here of Syracuse University, and as such he builds and engages communities, prospective students, also alumni, internship sites, employers, and entrepreneurs all over the West Coast, from San Francisco to Vancouver.
Do I get to give academic credentials
So,
too?
yes. And please tell us about Syracuse University undergraduate entrepreneurship program.
Absolutely. So I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Washington and a master's degree from Syracuse. But what I'm excited to talk about on this panel is the MBA versus Hard Knocks, which is the title. But we're saying at Syracuse, neither and both, and rolling out a startup minor open to undergraduates from any discipline that combines a series of courses on ideation, brainstorming, and forming your team in the fall. In the spring, you go from idea to startup, vetting that, shedding the things that might not work, refining it, pivoting. And then in the summer, you move into the incubation space on campus. You get a little bit of money from an alumni fund. We don't take equity. And then you finish up with 9 credits of working on your business so that when you graduate, you don't need to go to interviews or you don't need to look for a job. You've got a running business that you've made a couple of mistakes, but you've learned with that safety net of your dorm room and your meal card, and when you enter the real world, you're ready to go. So.
Right, thank you. Finally, last but not least, we have Gorgon, Yanni, who is a Silicon Valley born and raised tech enthusiast. He writes for Mobile Crunch and is a co-founder of Udemy, a website that enables anyone to create an online course or webinar. He's also a graduate of the Founders Institute.
Thanks. So, hello? Great. Okay. Yeah, I'm co-founder of Udemy. I graduated from Berkeley with a degree in economics. Like everybody else, I don't think it was that relevant to my startup experience. A year ago, I founded Udemy and joined the Founder Institute, which is a 14-week mentorship and incubator program for students interested, or like people who are interested in starting companies, essentially. And different from most incubator programs, they don't actually invest in your company, but they do have a 3.5% equity pool that you put into, and you share. Of that 3.5%, 2% goes to the mentors and the fellow founders, so you have an interest in other founders, and then 1.5% the institute keeps.
Great, thank you. So I've heard some of you tell me how entrepreneurship is an applied science that really doesn't lend itself that well to classroom theory. I would love for you both to start by telling us your story and how, I mean, you told me you were pretty lousy at school. How could you share with us how you, sorry, I forgot this. Can you share with us how you went about educating yourself as an aspiring entrepreneur?
Well, when I graduated from college, I guess I came to one of those conclusions that, okay, here I graduated with a 4-year degree, and do I really want to work for the rest of my life, retire at 65, and get 2 weeks of vacation a year? That really didn't sound very interesting. So previous to that, I had done, when I was a kid, I was doing, stuff like going around the neighborhood trying to solicit businesses, money for me to buy a baseball glove, for instance, because my parents didn't have enough money. So if I wanted to join a baseball team, I'd have to go out and solicit this money. So I sort of had that concept of what entrepreneurship was all about. How I really got into it is, as a kid, very young, I was doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing, but of course that was the only way I could make any money. So I ended up one night about 3 o'clock in the morning getting shot in the head, and then left for dead, and then sort of decided that maybe I should do something else. And so I think it was a lesson from way back in terms of how I looked at life, and exactly the kind of things I really wanted to do. So that was the start. My first business was teaching myself how to shoot photographs, and became a photographer. And that lasted about 9 months, and I totally screwed up, and that company went nowhere. But every time that I was determined to get ahead. So what I did was, when I didn't understand how to do something, I'd go work for somebody, and just through the experience of working, I learned how to run parts of a business. And then I went off and started another business. And then when I came to the point that I couldn't do any more, I either sold that business or just quit that business. Went to work for somebody else. So where my break was that I used to be the director of operations for a company called Computerland, which long time ago was, some of you actually are smiling, so you remember this. And I established a worldwide service program. And so I really saw that service, technology service was really something that was starting to come about. And this is probably about early 80s. So I didn't think that they had actually done a really good job with the stuff that I had put together for them. So I launched my first high-tech company at that point, which was actually not high-tech anymore. It was like a computer repair company, which then developed into a Novell networking company, which then became a Microsoft networking company. And we had come in so early that we became the largest networking company in the Western United States. But each time that I went through this, it's like the things that I learned, I would really learn by being in a company that allowed me to learn, make mistakes, and actually be able to manage.
Great, thank you. So what strikes me is that all of you are involved in organizations that are absolutely practice this kind of teaching, which is entirely project-based. Gagan, can you tell us about the Founders Institute and how it works in that respect?
Sure. I mean, so the Founder Institute, like I said, it's a 14-week program. You basically come in with an idea and you're supposed to come out with a company, is sort of the philosophy. And I think it's interesting, we spend, 3 hours a week where we get information from, high-class mentors like Naval Ravikant, investor in Twitter, Dave McClure, who's an investor in Mint. Our mentors, Aaron Patzer, who started Mint, is also a mentor, and a bunch of other people who are far more successful in all three of those we haven't heard of. But anyway, so they come in and they spend an hour, 3 hours each week teaching you about a different subject, and it starts with like ideation and getting your idea right, all the way through hiring and firing, marketing, PR, to raising money and exits and exiting your company. And in that process, you're supposed to also be building your own company, and it's sort of a mentorship and community program as well.
Great, thank you. Shay?
Yeah, to hear the description of the Founders Institute is very similar to what the Startup Minor is, but you don't even have to come with an idea. That's the first thing. The first class is called What's the Big Idea? And you get 100 undergrads from music majors and engineers and biologists, and then some business people and technologists, and you just let them ideate for a semester, explore with each other, share, and at the end you've got a message board with 30,000 posts about 3,000 ideas, and all of them are at least in some way viable, or were when they were proposed, right? And then in the spring we go through the second part, which is valuation and investment, and then keeping all those things, and then let's do it, give them a shot. So I like this, and I like it in different settings, right? At the university level, but also post-university or outside the university. And there's different resources that, we don't have Dave McClure and the Mint guys, but we've got faculty and we've got space and we've got other resources. So there's different approaches, but it's pushing to the same goal.
Yeah, so just to go on that, I love the fact that you're trying to start entrepreneurship even before someone has decided to be an entrepreneur. That's really interesting. But the question I have is, can university faculty really help in entrepreneurship? Because I'll tell you that most of the time when I talk to a professor of any sort, and I'm starting a company that services educators in some way, right? So I've talked to many professors. I haven't met a single one that has provided a valuable piece of advice, period. And most of them provide the opposite advice, for example, write a business plan. And I can't tell you the number of times I've heard write a business plan from a university professor and never heard it from an investor or entrepreneur. So I love the rest of the program. I'm curious about how you solve that problem.
Yeah, and that's a totally fair question. So what we do is we use adjunct professors who are full-time professionals who their only relationship with the university is to teach this course. And we have an entrepreneur in residence who is funded in part by the university, who's heading up this because they're not a professor in that traditional role. But I would also say that professors can be great resources. It depends on asking the right question, right? And maybe part of that is somebody who can say, you know what, don't talk to this guy, why don't you go talk to this woman over here because she's got a better, more approachable perspective, or whatever it is. So there needs to be this mediator, because the traditional constraints of the university don't lend themselves to these ideas. But that's not to say that you should write them off. It's just in the approach. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So Sparkseed is an accelerator, so by definition, it's about the project, it's about the company being built, right?
Yeah, and this is a really good jumping off point, because we're talking about, do you go with practitioners, entrepreneurs, or academics? And so what we've been doing at Sparkseed for the last few years is We identify these very promising social entrepreneurs, they pitch their businesses to us, and we put them through a program like many other accelerator programs, which we've heard about. You work all day on your business. At night or at a specific time during the week, you meet with practitioners, get their advice as investors and entrepreneurs. And that was really my experience as educating myself as an entrepreneur. Is I just worked hard, I failed fast, and then I met with really smart people. I think what we're about to see, and I just came, so I didn't hear what Fadi was talking about, but what Fadi and Steve Blank and Max Murmer and Osterwalder and Mike Maples and these guys are working on is don't just go out there and seek advice from entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are going to give you a variety of pieces of advice. Like, for example, do you focus on competitors? How many here think you should focus intensely on your competitors? How many people think you should disregard your competitors and just do your thing? Okay, and 70% of us didn't raise our hands, and both of my hands would be up because I don't know. And the answer is that they're both right, but in different circumstances depending on your business. And I can tell you precisely what type of business you should work on or focus on your competitors and which you shouldn't. This is all to say that now what accelerators and incubators need to focus on is a methodology that's proven to find your business model and to develop your customer base. And most accelerator programs and incubators, and I can say in Sparkseed's early days, we didn't create that methodology. It was hack your head off and talk to smart people. And now I think what's really exciting is that methodologies are starting to be created and that people have more of a science of entrepreneurship as opposed to an art of entrepreneurship.
Great, thank you, Mike. So if that's okay with you, I would actually like to invite those of you who are so inclined to ask questions now, and we will have this dialogue going throughout this session. Is anyone has a question for the panelists? So if you would please stand up and introduce yourself to all of us here and speak loudly when you state your question.
Okay. Stephanie Bottom. The question I have for all of you is, especially in the university environment and in the Founders Fund, for the universities, are you actually using any of the IP that the university holds to put into this incubation pool as a way of commercializing the IP? And for the Founders group, how are you looking at accessing IP that you might find that could be necessary to augment something that's already that's coming into your environment?
So just broadly, no, we haven't yet, and most of the reason is that these are not university faculty using research labs to develop IP, and we do have a technology transfer office, and we do have these mechanisms for doing that, but this is to get the students who, dealing with student IP is a much different, murkier issue, so we haven't crossed that yet, and we're not putting IP into the pool, nor are we trying to capitalize on it when it comes out yet. Although maybe we will in the future, I don't know. So, is that enough for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. So,
Sorry.
sorry.
So I'm Mike Siegel with Guidewire Group. I had two questions. First of all, what's the business structure for your two? Because I know what Founders Institute is, and I know what Syracuse is. Public, private, et cetera. Second question, which goes off of what you're saying in the scientific, is how do any of you benchmark your success as an organization?
So since we were working with a very high-risk population, young social entrepreneurs, we formed a 501c3 nonprofit, and we created a hybrid organization, meaning in our early years, we were supported mostly by entrepreneurs who wanted to give back to younger entrepreneurs who are having a positive impact on the world. And then what we created, though, with our attorneys and some other folks, was a way for a nonprofit to actually make equity investments in for-profit social ventures. And so that was the innovation of Sparkseed, was that we were bringing a venture capital model into the nonprofit industry. And so that's how we've been structured. As far as benchmarking our success, the hardest thing for us has been, we work with social entrepreneurship all over, across the board. That's like saying we work with entrepreneurs, as opposed to saying we work with consumer software entrepreneurs. Meaning our ventures are working in the United States, they're working in Africa, some are working in the environment, some are working on education. And so our biggest difficulty has actually been in measuring their aggregate social and environmental impact. So for example, one of our ventures is called the School Fund, and it's an incredible platform where you have hyper-personalized relationships with the students in Tanzania that you're supporting financially. So you can go on the schoolfund.org, make a donation to a specific student, and say what aspect of their education you want to support. $25 for books, $30 for uniforms. So the question of where's my money going in philanthropy is taken out. Now they've only helped about 60 students, which doesn't sound very impressive, but they've had a really deep impact on their lives. These students actually go to school when otherwise they couldn't afford to do that. We have another venture called IneedApencil.com, which provides free SAT prep to low-income students. And they've helped over 30,000 students, but it's a low touch. So it's hard for us to just aggregate the number and say, we've helped 30,060 students because there are different gradations of impact there. And then of course we have the financial. We look at how much money they've raised. We're too young, we haven't had an exit yet, but that's certainly one of the things that we track.
Urban Fire is a program for an organization I founded called Urban Voice, and Urban Voice is a 501c3. So the three things that we do is that we have the Urban Fire Entrepreneurship Training Program, and then we have a social venture called Urban Roots, and Urban Roots is an urban farming program that we established. We just partnered up with Madison Marquette, which is one of the largest owners of shopping malls in the country, and we worked it out with them to get a half acre in Emeryville. If anybody's been in Emeryville, they've been to Bay Street. They've got a large plot that's just sitting empty, and we had worked with them to try to get part of that, and we were able to get half an acre, so we're going to be establishing a farm there. But in terms of benchmarks, with the way our program works is that we would love to have you launch a business because we do feel that entrepreneurship is a way out of economic depression, that you can actually hopefully do something with that. We're also realistic that our students are from very poor communities, that their financial credits are not very good, and nobody's going to give them any money. So the way I teach entrepreneurship and how to start a business is pretty much the way I started all my businesses, which is to say you have no money at all. And you start and you launch your business without any money, and you have to work it. And so that it may not be what you dream of, but it's going to be something that's startable, because I don't want my students to say, I can't start a business because I can't get no money. That's not the thing. If you really want to do this, my feeling is that you can really get launched without any money. Just go with exactly what you have. And I've done that with every single project I've ever done. So in terms of what's a benchmark, my benchmark is this. If my students go out of the program and they launch a business, that's the best benchmark I could see. Sustainability is the second part of it. How long can they stay in business? And so what we have to do is we have to start developing these other programs, which we haven't done yet because there's no money in it that we've been able to get, is to have like a business incubator, is to have a program where we can help our students to move along and see to their 3-year mark, to their 5-year mark. I mean, that's where we're going with this. The other benchmark I see is that there's a lot of people now, whether they're from low-income communities or they're from, I've got students that have PhDs and masters that are coming to my program now because they realize that these large companies have downsized forever and they're not going to get these jobs back. If you look at the statistics that was developed by the U.S. Department of Statistics, it says that at least 33% of us right now are self-employed. And that's a trend that's going on. So entrepreneurship as a lifestyle, as a way you live, is going to be very, very critical. So more and more people are going to have to do that. Whether they start a business or they develop into entrepreneurs in companies, I think the skills of entrepreneurship are going to be very, very important.
Thank you. So now, MBA programs have a bad rap, and a big part of it is because typically they've been catering to the socio-economic elite. And obviously the entrepreneurship spirit lives way out of this circle as well and needs support wherever it is. So actually, Boku, I would love for you to tell us about the specific constituency you work with and what opportunities or challenges you found there.
The biggest challenge I have in my program, and it's a 24-week program, they have to come 1 day a week. It's 3 hours on Saturdays, and they first learn 12 weeks of fundamental things, and then the second week we actually do what I have is an in-house business plan program, and also teach them how to do videos as marketing tools. That's in the second semester now. I'll say this, that I think business plans are bullshit. I've read 200 business plans, and I've done probably 24. And every business plan that I've done, and when I launched my business, 6 months later, I mean, it's completely different. And I think every person I know of that's actually done this will tell you the same thing. I think business plans are important to develop the business, the discipline to develop a roadmap. But, you know, you're going to be changing that roadmap, and I think that's just the way it's going to go. Because where it's really going to matter is when you launch and when you experience the things that you do, is when you can really start to develop a true business plan. So I go into that with that information for my students so they understand. So we've developed a 3-day session. It's actually 9 hours, where I'm asking them what I think to be the most critical questions for what your business is going to do. And once they develop that, then they can actually launch that business.
Do they necessarily come to you with an idea of the business they want to create?
They do. There's a lot of them, even among the PhDs and everybody else, there's a lot of people that would love to start a business but really don't have the skills to be able to do that. What I found is not necessarily teaching business skills, is to actually teach them success skills. And one of the things I was able to do is, back in '95 I sold a company, and then I decided what the hell am I going to do next. And one of the things I did do was kind of tour around the country, tour around the world, and kind of look at best practices and different kinds of things that were happening in business. I ended up at Carnegie Mellon, and I looked at some of the research that was done by a guy named Anders Ericsson. Is anybody familiar with Anders Ericsson? Yeah, this famous guy who developed the whole science of success. And the books that have come out using his research have been phenomenal. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, The Talent Code, Talent is Overrated. They're all around the research that Anders Ericsson had done. Also, there's a woman here, a psychologist, Carol Dweck, who came out with a book called The Mindset, which is also just a phenomenal book. And what I find is that the key thing that I have to teach people is to change the way they look at what they're doing. Going from like an employee mentality to a entrepreneurial mentality. And so these kinds of research that are out there, I think are the most important things for me to be able to teach my students. And then the business skills are pretty fundamental. I mean, I think you can just teach that. But the entrepreneurial part is really the critical part that we have to teach.
Shay, so Syracuse University is doing something very interesting, which is targeting undergraduate students. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the benchmarking question, because you know, we are a nonprofit institution, and we don't have the expectation that every idea is going to work, that every student in that class is going to be an entrepreneur, but that they can bring that entrepreneurial spirit to the jobs that they will encounter, that they will be able to say, you know what, I might not be a founder, but I found this great skill, and I want to get on early with one of these companies, and then to grow that ecosystem beyond. So the Syracuse students might say, okay, we've got a great idea, but we need a biotech partner to bring this in. Okay, well, there's some students at Cornell. Okay, well, there's some students at RPI in Albany or at Rochester, right? And you can really start to leverage that larger community, and that ecosystem that Alan was talking about this morning becomes so valuable, that networked ecosystem. And then when they can do that within the support structures of these institutions, and you can start to bridge those gaps, it's amazing what you're going to be able to create. So we're just trying to foster those opportunities now. It's our 3rd year, so we're entering our 3rd fall of this course, and trying to learn how to present it, what works, what doesn't, and get better as an institution, as a provider, but also just to see what the students bring to us, and that's the most exciting part. You know, there's no risk too big, there's no idea too far-fetched, and when you work with that every day is a good day.
Can you remind us how many ventures are on board right now?
So the companies that actually make it to the accelerator over the summer, we had 4 the first summer and 12 last summer. From the first class, One has graduated and actually got funded. Brand Yourself is a business that helps college students manage their online reputation so that when employers or internships search for them, they find what the students hope they find rather than what the students hope they don't find, which is a big market. And then this last class is a company called Graphiters, which is an online game where you can draw a character, take a picture with your smartphone and upload it, and then fight your friends' characters based on the component pieces, whether your characters have thick arms or fast arms or strong legs. So you sketch it, take a picture, and then it analyzes it and animates a fight with, you know, Mike's character over here. So Graphiters and Brand Yourself, and that's just in the first 2 years. So these are business students and artists and designers, and these are great businesses that you would never see otherwise. So
Great, young entrepreneurs who are way younger than typical age of MBA programs. Cool. Mike, could you tell us about this breed of entrepreneurs that are the young, the social entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time on college campuses, and social entrepreneurship is certainly a trend that's popping up. Students are less interested in just going and getting a job. They're highly skeptical that they will work with a corporation and stay with it and retire and get a pension. And so they want meaning. And organizations like Tom's Shoes or Teach for America or TerraCycle or any of these social ventures have really inspired them. And more of them have been started by college students. And so what we're seeing is that a lot of them, they want to try out entrepreneurship and they want to do something meaningful. And it's on almost every single campus. I was at Santa Clara University this morning. It's a huge thing there. Schools are investing in social entrepreneurship classes and centers. The most popular club at Harvard Business School is the Social Enterprise Club. And so it's certainly a trend that people are moving into. Now the question is, how do you actually start a social venture? That's really hard because many of these people are first-time entrepreneurs. And so that's really where Spark Seeds come in, is they have great ideas, they're very passionate, but they don't have the connections, they don't have the resources, and they don't have the experience. And so how can we help them launch their businesses?
Anyone has a question for our panelists?
Hi, I'm Sandy Miller from Kaufman Labs. I was wondering if each of you could address how you're thinking about scale and sustainability for your organizations.
So that's a really good question for us because we've always been very high touch. So we had 7 ventures this year, we had 8 ventures last year, and we didn't want to have more ventures than we can really work with. And so we thought, how do we scale our model? And we haven't, the strategic plan was just created this fall, and so we haven't started to replicate, but the idea would be that we would have Spark Seed accelerators around the world. So there would be Spark Seed Rio and Spark Seed Shanghai and Spark Seed Mumbai, and we've had a lot of interest in that in the past, but we haven't executed because we wanted to really prove our model here in the United States. And now we feel comfortable where we have our program package, just like we've all described. We know the components. It's funding, it's mentoring, it's professional services, connections to investors, and now that we have that package, we can start exporting it to other organizations to scale.
Let me ask you this. How do you belong to a gym? Not many. I'll say this, the gym is one of the best places to network at, and if you're an entrepreneur, I'll say this. Well, yeah, I know it used to be bars after work, right? That's where but gyms are this incredible place where everybody looks the same. Whether you're a venture capitalist, whether you're the head of a company, or whether you're just like starting out, you all wear the same uniform. And so when you all wear the same uniform, the thing that you're doing in the gym is something that you all have a common interest in doing. And so what I found is that like early in the morning is when all the people who are decision makers go to the gym. The people that go at night are people who are lonely and want to get boyfriends and girlfriends. You know, but if you really want to do something with your business, I guarantee you that going to the gym in the morning and creating those relationships in the morning is going to be really beneficial. I have met so many people that have become my investors, become people that link me up with other people, and have just promoted my businesses. And when they get to know you on that personal basis, they are really into, they become your champions.
I guess
Some
the
of them.
trick is to pick the right gym, though.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, that's fine.
So we have 4 minutes left. Any questions to our panelists? Cassie?
I'm Cassie Phillips from Wildfire. This might be more of a just kind of ending statement question with a quick, there's no easy answer to this. I feel like a lot of this panel's been addressing people in their 20s who had a family that could get them into Harvard, that could help get them to Harvard, that could coach them along the way. They went to a high school that had a guidance counselor that could help them with that application process. They had $10K in their fun kid bank account, which I don't know how many of us in this room actually had. Is there something we can do for 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, people at that young an age? Because I feel like a lot of us in this room had parents who said, go to that after school program, drive yourself, let's get motivated. What happens to those kids who have single moms or 2 parents that work all day? Is there a quick answer that any of you have to, how do you address that age group to get them to this stage where they can have these opportunities?
Great question.
I'll just give you a quick one. For me, I think if you think about it, if you're going to be a parent, you better be a really great parent. I mean, just because you have full-time work and all that, I think once you have a kid, then your responsibility is to nurture that kid. And I mean, there's so many different things out there. That, if you read Outliers, for instance, they're talking about children, right? And they're talking about that. I mean, the parent has to be there. And I come across so many cases in my program where I have a lot of single women that have 1, 2, 3 kids, and they cannot take care of them. And is there a reason why there's all this problems in the inner cities? It's because kids grow up without parents, and so they join gangs because that's their parent. That becomes where they belong. So I think the best thing you can do is be a great parent. That's where it starts from.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, at that young, it's hard to say. I would say let them be kids and have fun, and who knows if they're meant to be an entrepreneur and artist. In my family, we didn't have any money, and single mom, all that stuff. And I think I did okay because my mom always supported whatever I did. Like my undergraduate degree is in theology, not the best return on investment with that one. But she always supported what I want to do, including being an entrepreneur, which was also quite risky. And that vote of confidence was huge for me.
Exactly, and I think you'll find that a lot of the people who end up reaching successful levels are products of intact families who are supportive, right? And so if that's what it takes, then that's what I can give back. I can make good choices in my partners and then make the best choices for the kids that I have. That's as much as I can do, and if more people do that, collectively we'll raise. But that's my contribution and focus and so on.
Yeah, I didn't want to speak last because I have very dark feelings about this, but have any of you guys ever watched Waiting for Superman? How many people in this room? I mean, it's actually very possible, at least according to that movie and some of the research that's done, that's displayed in the movie, to raise good kids without great parents. Like, it works. Like, you can do it. The government basically becomes your parents through school. The problem is that the government isn't smart enough to do that. And so, and neither are the teachers' unions. And so combined with 2 of the most inept bodies of our entire country, we're basically screwed. And I really don't know what the solution is, and that's why I just block my mind from it and don't spend any time trying to solve it. I think I can help people in a different way, but I don't think that 4-year-olds are ever gonna learn on Udemy and change, like, I can't do that, unfortunately. What I can do is say that if you're 12 and you're willing to watch a video for an hour, that in 5 years you can get just as good education as someone at Harvard. And that could be pretty powerful.
Great, thank you. I think we have reached the end of our time here. So thank you very much to all of you for your great questions. And thank you for your great conversation.